Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Jedi Way here on the Outlaw Nation channel. I am the Outlaw, sometimes known as Rocha around here, joined by these two wonderful people to talk about this big story that dropped yesterday. But let's introduce ourselves first. Laura Kelly, the co-host Four Stars Pod. How are you? Laura, you're hanging out in Denver. How are things?
I am. I'm doing a little vacation in Denver, although I say that and I worked all day today. But so forgive me if I don't have that vacation glow about me yet. I'll get there. But yeah, coming to you with not my usual setup, not my usual camera, microphone, anything. Bear with me, folks, today. I am excited to be here talking about this, but a sort of a downer of a subject. But looking forward to hearing your guys' takes on it for sure.
I agree. And somebody whose take we very much appreciate is the great Kevin Smets, head of KOTOR, killing it all in all areas. Kevin, how are you? How are you feeling? How are things? Nice new Padres hat. Look at that thing. It looks nice.
Yeah, I went to the game last night. So my friend Danny has the greatest philosophy. I don't know, some sports fans. So the Padres were up like 5-3 at the 7th. So he's like, hey, let's go to a bar and have some beers. And I'm like, well, do you want to see the end of the game? And he made a good point. He's like, well, they're up 2. If we stay, the only thing we risk seeing is the Padres blowing the lead and then losing the game. So we might as well leave on a high note and go have some beer. So I kind of hit it a little hard last night, so I'm feeling it today. Wow. I have a lot of work to do. So it's but I'm pretty good. I'm not condoning leaving every sporting event early, but if they have it well in hand, the only thing you can do by staying is experience pain or see them run up the score or win or get tied and then all this headache. So get to the bar earlier is what my friend always says. So yeah, but
so what your friend said is like the stereotype of the LA fan, that they leave like in the 7th inning, they leave in the middle of the 4th quarter. But
yeah,
you know, I get it.
I know. I bet the fans are like, you should turn in your Padres hat.
Well,
it's fine, man. We had fun. We caught the rest of the game on the TV or at the bar. So
nice. Well, if only the Acolyte had listened, they'd have dumped out after episode 5. But unfortunately, no, we are here to talk about, sadly. And look, I made a joke, but it doesn't mean I don't feel this. I don't feel the seriousness of the situation. Just trying to lighten the mood a little bit. But we are going to talk about, over the next however long this show goes, about the cancellation of the Acolyte, season 2 of the Acolyte. This happened here yesterday. Deadline was reporting it. Nelly Andreeva over there at Deadline, in exclusive here. The story of the Acolyte will not continue, with Lucasfilm opting not to proceed with the 2nd season of the Star Wars offshoot that starred Amanda Stenberg. The news is not entirely surprising. The article says the Acolyte did okay with critics, with 78% on Rotten Tomatoes, but divided fans overall in terms of the viewership. It got off to a strong start, launched on June 4th, 2 episodes, generating 4.8 million views in its first day on the stream. It ranked as the biggest series premiere on Disney Plus this year, but the tally rose to 11 million views globally after 5 days of streaming. Corroborating Disney's data, the series made its debut on Nielsen's top 10 originals charts in its premiere week at number 7, climbing to number 6 the following week. But the Acolyte could not sustain the momentum, dropping out of the top 10 in week 3 and staying off before returning at number 10 after the release of the finale. So that is some tough news to take. Certainly social media over the last 23 hours was recording this, because this was released I think at 4 o'clock yesterday, has been exploding with reactions, exploding with feelings and anger and frustration, and a lot of blame going around, and people angry that certain sections of the fandom are celebrating this, which we'll get to later on. But Laura Kelly, I got to hear your reaction when you heard the news, what you're feeling, what were your thoughts with all of this, and seeing the reactions here online.
Well, the reaction has certainly been interesting to watch. I can't decide. I don't think I'm really surprised that it got canceled. I think if you had asked me the day before whether it would get renewed, I think I probably would have given it like a 50-50 shot. Yeah. I have not made any secret of the fact that I didn't care much for this show overall. But I'm in the same boat. I'm not celebrating by any means that all of these people who worked so hard to bring this show to the screen no longer have the opportunity to do that for a 2nd season. That part of it is sad. So I do feel sad for the cast and crew that they don't get to continue this story. that they have to sort of just leave it on the cliffhanger and just live with that, I guess, for the time being until maybe publishing decides to pick it up and pick up the story there or something. I don't know. But this show just wasn't for me, so I'm not by any means personally devastated that I don't get to find out what happens next. Like, that's not bothering me. What's bothering me is that there is a subsect of the fandom that is getting validated by this, and that thinks that all of the review bombing that they did is somehow validating, was the right way to go, or it will empower them to unfortunately do it again with any show that appears, not even that is doing it, but if it even in like previews appears to be marginalizing straight white dudes, that their review bombing campaign is going to commence because here people think that it worked in this case. I don't necessarily think that that's true. I think that this show had other things working against it, but that I think people are going to definitely take the advantage and opportunity of feeling validated by this move. So that part of it is really disappointing and really sad. But yeah, personally, I'm like, I think I said it in our last episode where we reviewed the finale. I don't need a second season of the show. I'm good. But yeah, Kevin, where do you land on this news? Because this has been, this was sort of, did you say that you just found out about this today? Or John, did you say this news dropped yesterday? Now all the days are blending together.
Late in the afternoon, it dropped yesterday. But Kevin, what are your thoughts?
I've been kind of out of it. Yeah, I mean, I always look forward to going on the show with you guys, but like today, I was kind of just dreading it, to be honest, because like, no, I don't like to hear anyone lose work. I don't like to hear anyone be out of a job. I know how it is. I worked on a show once that was a cool show. We put our heart into it for like 2 months. It was about like minor league football in like New York or whatever, and it was like shot like Hard Knocks, and I put a lot of my like creativity into it. And then when one of the mergers happened, I forget which merger it was now, but it got canned before we even got a chance to like finish the show, and all of us losing our work, like it was like really hard. And so to know that there are people out there that are hurting about it, and then to the fandom, it wasn't really my show either. Like I'm just trying to think, like, would I rewatch it? Like, no, like maybe like episode 5 and like a piece here and there. I mean, I do my super watch where I watch everything, so I guess I would, but I'm bummed for like the super fans of it, because I know when a show that I love is on and then that goes away forever, like I know how that makes me feel. And so I feel a lot of the fandom hurting right now. It's kind of like Obi-Wan, like it's like a sudden thousands of voices cry out in terror and there's suddenly silence. Like there's a lot of hurt going on out there too. And then like Laura said, there's a lot of this toxic negativity out there that are posting pics of like the Endor celebration, like they won, and I think Elon Musk, maybe that was a fake, but
yes,
Elon Musk,
he posted it.
It was not fake. He did that.
Yep.
Elon's chiming in about it, and they're just kind of dancing on the graves of these fallen. And all they were trying to do was do Star Wars. Now, I have my misgivings about some of the quotes that were made during the promotion process of the show, and some of the decisions, but I thought the acting was good, and I know we'll get into it later from our text thread, so I'll wait on that with like what Amanda has been dealing with and stuff. So going into this, it's just a lot of kind of pain on both sides, and just that overall negativity feeling. And this is from someone that I actually didn't really remember. I think at the end I gave it a 6.5. Like, and even then I was getting threats, by the way, on my KOTOR channel because I didn't hate it enough. And so, it's just a really ugly community right now, ugly scene. And at least, through the negativity and the ugliness, you do see a lot of people lifting each other up online, and I like to see that. But unfortunately, that's less seen, and more is the negativity and stuff. So yeah, kind of torn on all of it, but and also finally, let's put a nail in the coffin. Laura's never going to read the Plagueis novel now because there's no reason to. They're not going to get into they're not going to get into the Plagueis story. So
your dream is dead. Your dream is over.
It's dead.
Sure. No, I when I got the news yesterday, I was not like Laura. I was not surprised, and to me, when they didn't announce anything, as Laura and I did the preview for D23, we thought it was possible that we might get an announcement that Emmanuel Jacinto might be the person who's announcing season 2, but then he didn't. And there was no one who announced it. And so when I didn't hear it at D23, I knew its days were numbered for a season 2. So I wasn't too surprised. To do it on Manny Jacinto's birthday, was it especially harsh? Because there's no way.
I didn't know that.
There was no way that Natalie Andreeva didn't get the information from someone at Lucasfilm, especially working for Deadline. You got to be real clear about that. And so I think they let it leak, tried to maybe, kind of cover it up. Hey, the DNC is happening. People aren't paying attention. Let's drop it at 4:00 on a Monday. And but no, clearly people had a lot of strong feelings about this show. And I do agree with you guys. It's a complex situation. It is not as simple as a bunch of incels got upset. By the way, male and female incels, let's be real here, and went after the show and destroyed it. It's not just that. It's more. And this is why it's a difficult thing to parse out and say, like, one thing happened. No, multiple things happened. The show clearly wasn't up to the quality that it should have been up for a lot of people. There was issues with some of the writing. There was a mishmash of tones, some of the performances, some of the character development, losing certain characters that we were loving and were upset we wouldn't get more with. So there were a lot of issues around the show. Regardless that anyone wants to look at the show and think it was the greatest thing ever, you have a right to feel this way. But the people voted by not watching it. And it wasn't just the review bombing. And I think that's too simplistic to say that was the reason. People didn't have an interest in it after a while. You tried to grab them. They clearly sampled it in the first 2 or 3 weeks, didn't like what they saw, didn't want to watch it anymore, and the views dropped. It wasn't the review bombing. The fact that they initially, or only rather, the fact that many people came in initially, I think says there was interest, but the interest died out as the weeks went along because you were losing people consistently. And so there's a lot that was the issue here. And for me, I come to this like, this is a great strong, and I hope Lucasfilm learns the lesson. You got to come correct with this content. You can't mess around with this content. You got to come good because there are already people waiting with fork and knives and pitchforks and torches to burn you to the ground if you don't come out with a great product. This is the kind of situation we're now, unfortunately, with Star Wars. There is not going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be allowed to breathe anymore because there is so much expectation and frustration within the fandom. And I can't get too much into it, but from what I hear, the production is possibly at a standstill for everything, movies included. So
what?
I don't know what the end result's going to be, but that's what I'm hearing and sensing from some of the comments from people I know close to the situation. So I don't know what it means, but I know this is a huge hurt for a lot of people like the show, and especially for people, Laura, who were like happy to have a black female lead, happy to have a Jedi of Korean descent, happy to have a multicultural, diverse show, because Lord knows we've seen so many movies and so many things with white people leading things. Let's have a show where it's not that way. Let's open the door, even though, we did have, God, I can't remember her name anymore, but clearly she was in green skin, but she was part of the show there, but you did have that element there. So Laura, that's another side of this thing. People are upset too because of the diverse nature of the show not being accepted overall by enough of the fandom for Lucasfilm and Disney to continue doing it.
Right. Now, this show spoke to people that haven't had a chance to see themselves reflected on screen very much. And that's always really tragic when a show like that has to take a hit like this. I mean, it made me sort of think of Our Flag Means Death that was airing on HBO. I mean, that was a diverse cast and crew telling a different story in a different way. And it was funny as hell, and it was romantic, and it was a well-structured story that had a beginning, middle, and end. And it got canceled after season 2, and that was so tragic. I mean, there were lots of, social media and fan movements to try and get it renewed for season 3, get it moved to a different network or something, because these people saw themselves in it. And I remember seeing it even at a panel at C2E2 for Our Flag Means Death, just seeing the audience and the enthusiasm for it. And that kind of thing is so cool and so fun to see. And so the cancellation of the Acolyte really made me think a lot about that and just how how sad that is, that all of these people that finally got this chance to actually see themselves on screen. I mean, there's a countless number of stories that have been told on screen, for even in Star Wars included, that have, you know, a white dude in the lead, and they're great stories, and that's great, but it's nice to see something a little bit different. And for the people that don't get to see them represented on screen as the hero as often, this was such a great opportunity for that to happen. And it sucks that the show had some pacing issues a little bit. There were a little bit of like character develop moments that were lacking, I think, in a lot of ways. And it's sad that it had to be this show that had all of that going for it. I also was really excited that this show had a writer's room. I've been rooting for a show in Star Wars with a writer's room. I think there's a lot of things in the Mandoverse that could benefit from just having Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau's voices being the sole voices. And now I feel like this is like another point in their favor of, we've tried to bring a writer's room together and look what happened. I'm like, no, please, it's not the same. Please let it not be the same thing. But I don't know. I'm like, I would have liked to have I wanted to root for it, you know? I wanted to root for this show. I was really excited about the general idea before it came out, and the execution of it didn't work for me, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't working for some people. And I'm happy that this was some people's show that they identified with, because I know how that feels when I find a Star Wars that is my Star Wars, man. That feeling's awesome. So I'm sad for those people that, you know, don't get to see the story continue.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, Kevin, I think I would feel this way if they had canceled Andor after the first season. I remember the views weren't great initially. They eventually got better and then got the prestige. And that's the reason why it continued. The prestige and the views picked up, but they also went a full court blitz on the Andor, right? They were on Andor, rather. They were showing it on ABC, and they were trying to really drum up interest in the show because they believed in the show. And the same things didn't happen here, but I would be just as bummed if they had canceled Andor after season 1, if the views had not gone up and people didn't seem to be interested in it. You know, because obviously I didn't like the Acolyte, but I liked Andor, so I would have been much more bummed in that way. So I can understand where the fans of the Acolyte feel today. Also a diverse cast there in Andor as well. So what are your thoughts on when you look at the diversity and the reaction here, and the feelings that people have who've seen themselves represented now, kind of having this show taken away from them?
Yeah, I mean, my heart breaks for them. So, and I haven't been active lately because of work and stuff, but active on Star Wars Twitter, and so there's been a lot of the activity I saw today, at least when I was just trying to catch up a little bit of it. A lot of hurt feelings, a lot of strong people, like people that feel like that they've been like kind of abandoned by Disney, and you know what I mean, like that their voices is not important enough to be heard, and you know, and at the end of the day, like it's Star Wars, but it means so much more to a lot of people. And again, like, and you know, just like you loved Andor, I loved Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan was almost universally hated for a while, right? Or a lot of people. That was a big split. There was a lot of people that didn't like it. So I kind of felt like I was on an island during that, and you know what I mean? Like, so I get it when you're liking something, and just like Laura says, like when you find your Star Wars, like for me, it's KOTOR, like, and I have that, you know, and that's been largely regarded as something very held in high esteem. But there are other aspects of Star Wars I like. I like Book of Boba Fett. Not a lot of people do, right? So, and then to be told that like I'm not a true Star Wars fan because I like something, or because I don't hate something, like it's just like I said, it's a weird vibe today because I love talking shop with you guys. But it just feels like we're reporting on like some really sad news. And at the end of the day, though, like you said, Rocha, and I think you said it in one of your tweets too, that it was a numbers game. It was viewership. It's not. It wasn't and I'm sure you might be getting into this, so I don't want to scoop a story, but it wasn't the review bombing. It was the people weren't coming to see that. They weren't going to see the show. And you know, if you're not, like you say, bringing your A game, if it wasn't the top quality. I mean, I think the choreography was great, the fighting was great, but like, I don't like the show looked to me like a cheaper show than Ahsoka, and it was like double the budget.
180 million.
So I think if you know, sometimes when these budgets get inflated, they can't. If this show was shot for half the price, maybe they'd be like, okay, we can do another season. But they chose to spend more money on it. And you know, first seasons of a lot of shows are struggle to find their footing. Seinfeld was almost canceled. The Office was almost not renewed. Breaking Bad, like you don't really fall in love with those characters until you start getting into seasons 2 and 3. So maybe the Acolyte will never get a chance to shine, and I just hope that you know they'll be able to continue the story in other media, so the fans of the show and the story will get their conclusions.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Laura?
Well, you bring up a bunch of shows that don't, you know, get their footing in their first season, and I think that's a really good point. And I brought this up while we were reviewing the Acolyte that it's not 2009 anymore. Parks and Rec, if it was on now and that show was getting the sort of reviews and the reception that it was getting in season 1, I mean, that would have been canceled in a heartbeat. And thank God it wasn't. I mean, look what like a beautiful story that ended up being, that people still go back and rewatch and revisit and binge and love. But, you know, a lot of people skip that first season when they watch it. And frankly, I kind of don't blame them. It laid a lot of groundwork that you needed, but it wasn't amazing. And they needed that season. They needed to get through that in order to find their footing in subsequent seasons. And it's just kind of tragic that that's just not an option anymore. It seems like it's not an option on these streaming services, and it's not an option on broadcast either. And I just think that that's too bad. If you're not knocking it out of the park with your first season, not getting to continue, I mean, I feel like we're going to like run out of stuff. Like they're going to run out of things to like keep trying if you're not going to give these shows a chance. But unfortunately, that's just the world we live in. And I don't know what the answer is, because I don't want to say like, well, creators need to adapt and they need to put their best foot forward. It's like they are putting their best foot forward. Like it's, and you know, maybe part of it was marketing. I remember like, you know, talking to my boss who's like a Star Wars sort of casual. He's like my benchmark that I use is like, he's not reading the canon novels, but he's seen the animation and he's kind of a lifelong fan, but like a casual lifelong fan. I think like 4 days before the show came out, he didn't even know it was coming out. They still did pretty good numbers on the premiere, but I think that there's still some struggle when it comes to marketing sometimes with these shows. And I wonder maybe if they had gone with a strategy like they did with Andor, where they put it on ABC and they put it on Hulu, if they had put this show in front of additional audiences, if it maybe would have succeeded a little bit more, or if more money had gone towards the budget of marketing rather than just sending swag bags to people on Twitter, like maybe there would have been a little bit something extra we could have gotten. I don't know. Like there was something more to squeeze there, but I just think that it's tragic that a lot of shows, number one, don't get more than 8 episodes to even really try to put their best foot forward. And then when they do, one season, if you're not knocking out of the park, it's over and done. That's a tragic time to be living in, I think, especially if you're a creative that's trying to get your show made.
Yeah.
And one more thing too, I bum out when any show ends on a cliffhanger. Like I think it's just my need to have things completed, and like it ends on a cliffhanger. Rocha, I'm sure you watched the show Heels on Stars.
Oh yeah, the wrestling show.
Loved that show. Yeah. And it ends on, I think someone else is picking it up. There's been talk of that, so maybe it's gonna come from into another. But it was on Stars and it got canceled. But their last season, their last episode of the last season ended on a huge cliffhanger with the main character, like a huge cliffhanger. And like, we don't know, we might not ever know what happens. So that's just the other wrinkle too. It's like, you know, wrap it up. Like they don't get the chance to wrap it up. And I guess with Star Wars, every new show you do kind of just starts this whole thing, right?
I mean, they're still retconning the damn Emperor becoming a clone, for God's sakes. They're still doing that to save the sequel trilogy. So you're right about that, Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, that's the thing. And for me, is, you know, you guys know this, and some of you who are watching or listening know this. Like, I've taken so much crap for banging the drum for representation over the last 8 years in this business and on YouTube shows. And, you know, people have unfollowed me or come after me. You know, John Woka. I get it. But I don't mind, because I'm fighting the fight to see the representation. And so a piece of me certainly feels sympathy for the people who saw themselves in Amanda Stenberg's character, a young Black woman leading a Star Wars show, or maybe some Latinas saw themselves in Daphne Keene's character, right? And the fact that she was playing it, or Lee Jung-jae in Soul, right? Or Mother Anasenia. I mean, those things you see all through. Or Yord. I mean, like, there are so many different characters that people of different ethnicities, different origins connect with, along with people who are not members of that ethnicity or gender or however you want to call it, and felt connected to these characters. And I think that's the truth, because there's so many. I mean, Chimera was fantastic, right? Chimera, Manny Jacinto, people connecting from the Philippines. People love seeing a Filipino actor embracing a role like this, seeing all of this stuff happen within the show. But it's unfortunate. And, we look at something like what Claire tweeted out here, or Claire responded, episode 4 writer here, Claire Keekle, saying, Dave Filoni gives notes on all the scripts. He has to ultimately approve them along with the rest of the Lucasfilm team. And, I go back to this, and I'm seeing the anti-woke people try to jump on bombs for Dave Filoni. And it's frustrating for me to see that, because, like, who's going to take the responsibility for this show failing? And this is something I talked about a few weeks ago. Like, Leslie Headland can't be the only one who gets sacrificed, or Amanda Stenberg, who we're going to get to some of these comments. Why does Dave Filoni, why do the higher ups at Lucasfilm and Disney get to escape scrutiny for a show like this failing? And please don't waste my time telling me Leslie got everything she wanted and got to do everything she wanted. She didn't. They went in and changed stuff. Were the bones there? Yes, but they went and adjusted some stuff. And that's what gets frustrating for me with the Star Wars side of things. Yes, it sucks they cancel all this stuff, but it's also that people who should be called to the carpet aren't being called to the carpet because they're hiding behind the fact that they can't say anything, that people can't say anything because of NDAs. And it gets frustrating after a while. And so the show dies. And in a way, the people who's going to get shit, a lesbian woman who is the creator of the show is going to get crap. And the diverse actors who are part of the show are going to get crap. But nobody else at Lucasfilm or Star Wars is going to get crap. And that, to me, it becomes a little frustrating on so many levels to see that, because we want to see more content like this. This content reflects us. I hate to break it to you. This is the real world. You see Black people, Latino people, Asian people in your life all the effing time. Filipino people, you see them in your life all the effing time. So to act like they don't exist or they shouldn't be leading Star Wars shows or any franchise shows is madness. Right. So it becomes frustrating when you see that narrative take hold in the fandom, so to speak. But what, Laura, I mean, does it feel like maybe there was a ball dropped here in some of the execution, some of the creation, like the show itself, like it's a bit of because like it feels like the communities that they were representing themselves didn't show up to watch the show in big enough numbers. And I'm sure you don't have numbers for that, but I'm just saying you sense that this was across the board kind of viewership that didn't show up as strongly as they could have to support this show. And it must come down to quality or something about it that didn't connect with enough of the fandom.
Yeah, I don't know if there's one single answer to what it comes down to as to what this is. I mean, you bring up the fact that like Leslie Headland's probably going to take the hit for this, and we definitely know the cast is already taking a hit for it. I mean, people like to call out Kathleen Kennedy. I'm sure she'll get knocked for this as well. I mean, she seems to be the default punching bag for a lot of people, but there's got to be a lot of people in between Kathleen Kennedy and Leslie Headland. That's not like the only direct, like, yes, maybe they have a direct line to each other, but there's a lot of other people that were involved. I mean, you're sort of hinting at studio interference being part of the downfall of this show, and Leslie Headland not getting to tell the story that maybe she set out fully to tell. And that's too bad. And that's probably got something to do with it. I imagine it has a lot to do with the sort of uneven shift in tone that we seem to get in a lot of this show. Not in every episode and not in every moment, but there were a lot of really noticeable tonal shifts that just didn't quite work. And that you kind of visibly see through it, and it just kind of stops the story dead in its tracks. I don't know if that's, is that writers? Is that the shift in different directors taking on different episodes that weren't necessarily back to back? Like, I don't know. I mean, I didn't think that I liked some of the performances in the show. There were quite a few that I really didn't care for. And just some of the character development stuff. I mean, maybe that's stuff getting cut out that should have been left in. I don't know. I don't know what all got left on the cutting room floor here, but I don't think that blaming the cast, blaming Leslie Headland, blaming Kathleen Kennedy, I don't think those are the only people that you can blame for this. I don't know who those people are, but I suspect that there are quite a few people in between. And the fact that Dave Filoni allegedly had that much involvement in each episode and each script of this show is a little bit suspicious to me. I mean, we have
silent about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, God forbid he like pick up his Twitter account and do anything but post a little scribble on a napkin once every 4 years. Be nice to hear a little bit of what he has to say on the subject matter, and maybe we'll get a little bit of that at Celebration or something. I don't know. Maybe we'll get some panel where we can actually get some answers of like what happened. I doubt it, because even when you do get a panel and you get the creators up on stage, you know that they've got leashes on, that they can't probably say everything that they want to say, but it would be nice to hear a little bit more about what happened behind the scenes. We still don't know what fully happened behind the scenes with Rogue One, so we probably won't ever hear what happened with this show. But I imagine that there's a lot more to blame than just Leslie Headland as the creator.
Or Solo.
Speaking of the blame game too, I worry that the era will be blamed. Let's think about this too.
Great point. Yeah.
They'll blame the High Republic. So there's the end of any High Republic in any other media but books and comics.
And honestly, I'm fine with that at this point. Just leave it as books, please.
You want to leave it to the books, sure, but some people would want to see more of it, right? Or now that they won't explore the Old Republic. In fact, they'll run into the arms of the safe Clone Wars era or the Luke Skywalker era, and you know what I mean, like, which I think has been told to death. And so it was interesting when you're saying, John, that you're hearing whispers of everything getting shutting down, at least for the time being. They might be getting total cold feet about this first ever Jedi story, right? Like the James Mangold one, like, so I fear it's always overcorrection. Batman v Superman was too dark and gritty and the fans didn't like it. So then they turned the Suicide Squad original cut into more like a Guardians of the Galaxy style, like popcorn thing, like over adjusting, right? And fast tracking Justice League. Like the DCEU did that happen to the DCEU, like companies, or even like with Trevorrow when he had that one. He had Jurassic World, everybody loved him. Then he had Book of Eli, then everybody hated him, and then suddenly he lost episode 9. So I think there's going to be some overcorrections here, and I don't know what that means for the future of Star Wars. So
Book of Henry is what you mean, not Book of
Henry. Yeah, Book of Eli was good.
Yeah, Book of Eli was good. Yeah. Wine Denzel. But I want to bring this up to get you guys, and in no way this me. I was here uncomfortable with like occasionally I'll get something, and I tweeted this out. And this is for season 2, that according to my sources at Disney and Lucasfilm, and they are close to Disney and Lucasfilm, the studio was in fact putting together a season 2 writer's room for The Acolyte back in February with Leslie Headland. What I didn't add here was that this was speculation in some articles back in February that were just tossed off as rumor or speculation. But from what I hear from my sources, they in fact were putting together a writer's room in February, and had been quietly inquiring about interest level and availability for directors for a season 2 as recently as last month, which is, of course, right before Celebration, or right before D23. The show definitely had a, quote, soft green light to continue, and Disney's internal language is describing the show as, quote, canceled, despite what they're saying publicly. So, I added a little my own opinion there. So, yeah, it was canceled. So you hear this, that they were definitely like on the path to a season 2 as early as last month even. So what would you think like was the thing that pushed them to cancel it? Because some people are speculating that Filoni canceled it. And I don't know that that's true or not, but some people have started speculating that way. But what do you guys think happened here? Why would they all of a sudden just cancel it after they were inquiring about directors for a season 2?
Numbers. This is a numbers game, 100%. I mean, I think and it's unfortunate that we don't have the exact numbers because there's no you know, there is a way for Disney Plus to internally measure this, but they're not releasing that information. So best thing that we have to go off of is what Nielsen releases. And from what I understand, this show had a pretty big drop off.
Yeah.
I think after a certain number of episodes. So I would imagine back in February when the show was in the can and they were ready, you know, it had all the episodes ready to go and they knew how the story ended and they knew that it was setting up leaving it on a cliffhanger to set up a season 2. Right, yeah, I'm sure they were excited to let's kind of get the ball rolling here and start getting some interest to see who we want to bring back to the writers' room and who we want to add and whatnot. And as I understand it, it had a somewhat strong premiere. So I just think it came down to numbers. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a business. And if we're not getting numbers and we're not getting those Disney Plus signups and we're not getting eyeballs on screens, I mean, that's the name of the game, unfortunately. Now, there might be more to it. Maybe Dave Filoni is the one who came in and canceled it because he wants more budget to go to the Mandoverse era and Ahsoka season 2 and who knows what. But if I had to guess, I think the more likely answer would be numbers.
Yeah, Iger came in, Kevin, and said very clearly that we're going to start separating these things out. We're not going to do as much content on the Marvel side. We're going to start maybe separating some Star Wars stuff out and make it more of an event type approach. So do you think that they realized at the end of the day there was so much backlash, so much negativity, the numbers weren't there, that they just thought it was a sunk cost to go into a season 2? Maybe they did some focus groups, you know, which they do all the time, studios do without people knowing about it, to kind of see the interest and gauge where the interest level is at, and that maybe ultimately, you know, force them to cancel it.
Can you put that tweet back up again?
Okay, sure.
Just wanted to compliment you on your use of GIF there. GIF, sorry, not GIF, GIF. Your GIF of
it took me a few minutes to find the right one.
You made a deal. Yeah, that's good. I just try to lighten the mood there. That was here it is.
I saw that one. I was like, that's
very good use of GIF, right, Laura? GIF.
Yeah.
It's GIF. Thank you.
Keeps on giving. The GIF that keeps on giving. Yeah. Yeah, I can't begin to like that. I saw that tweet too, and it's like, that's interesting. But things get like I said, like I was working on a show and like network had just given notes. And then like 2 days later, like they were, you know, now not going to roll forward with the show. And it was literally, it was about numbers. I think this was more about money though, because it was part of the merger. It was, I think it was in whatever. I don't want to get into specifics, but yeah, I mean, I would like to believe it's more the numbers but they got to listen to the critics too. Like a lot of the people had valid criticisms, whether the methods of how they communicated those criticisms. I was not a fan of all of it, but I understood why some people hated it. Like I said, everybody was saying I was riding the fence because while I liked the show, I understood why some people hated it, and I didn't love the show, and I understand why people loved it, right? But yeah, something they must have seen something in the numbers or focus groups, and they were like, man, or like we even kind of say it's like, okay, well, like they're not going to have another season 2. That will relieve the internet of arguing and bitching for 6 months, or so, you know what I mean, like for 6 weeks or 10 weeks, however long it's out, because it gets exhausting. You know what I mean? And that doesn't make anybody feel better who lost their jobs. I'm not saying I'm relieved of it. I'm just saying that they might have looked at it and been like, yeah, I mean, any publicity is good publicity, even bad publicity, but maybe the bad publicity is actually hurting our brand and we need to really like step away from the Acolyte and go back to, you know, hopefully go. The only thing I could say, the only like positivity out of this is let's get Star Wars back in the movie theaters. Like, I'm sorry, like friend of the podcast, Christian Harloff used to say, no, TV's where it's at now. I don't know if he's changed his stance on it, but man, it needs to be on the big screen. Blow us away for 2.5 hours and let us, you know, be in that galaxy far, far away and doing it as a shared experience. And I'm not saying to cancel all the Star Wars shows. I'm just saying there's been a lot of Star Wars shows and a lot of Star Wars content, and it starts to spread things thin. And maybe it needs to be more of an event as it used to be when it first came out again.
Well, this is the hubris of a studio, isn't it? Like, it's this idea of like, well, just like they did with Marvel, right? Well, you know, it'd be great. More Marvel, you know, let's do TV shows and let's do movies and let's intertwine them all together and let's get younger writers. Let's pay them less money and let's bring on new directors, or let's bring on other directors who may not have quite as much experience, and let's see what we get, or let's bring in old directors like Sam Raimi to see what they can do. And the results overall have not been positive. And I think the same thing is happening here with Star Wars. And I think Disney, and what may be behind some of the things I'm hearing, is Disney wants to take a break and be like, okay, let's reassess this whole thing, come up with a new plan going forward. Doesn't mean anything's going to get canceled. Just means let's take a step back for a second now, because I also think they canceled this to give Skeleton Crew a free ride in, like an unabashed free ride in, because by having people speculating around Acolyte, it kind of would have maybe tainted a little bit of the reaction to Skeleton Crew. Maybe they felt, get it done now, release it now in terms of the cancellation news, and then Skeleton Crew will have its own kind of existence and space to exist and be accepted. Maybe they felt that was the way to go. But the pause, to me, is what I think is happening, is they're like reassessing. And I'm not saying that there is a pause. I'm saying that's what I've heard from a couple of people, and that it may just be a reassessment of the landscape, just like they did when they initially took over the rights from Star Wars. And Kathleen said, look, Legends, everything that's outside the canon is Legends. This is the only path we are walking. This is all of canon. Maybe now they're realizing they got to slow things down, release less, and build up the event status of it all, which is, of course, what a lot of people said when they started dropping too much stuff. It was like, you're ruining the brand, you're tainting the brand, or you're oversaturating the market. And that may be the path they're walking now. We will see. But let's take a quick break, and we'll jump into a couple more things here. Because I know we've been going for like 40 minutes. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with a little bit more about this right after this. Laura, I mean, before we move off the stuff here, I mean, what we were hitting on earlier with Amanda Listenberg, I mean, I think we should bring up some of this stuff and talk about it and get through the muck before we come out the other side. And these are some of the reactions that Laura found for us to take a look at here. This was on Amanda Listenberg's Instagram. Is that correct, Laura?
That's right. Yeah.
So you see here some of these comments, so many deleted comments, the power of many, celebrating this kind of stuff, people who are never going to create. Well, I shouldn't say that, but so glad this, these comments here. So glad this dog crap of a show full of woke agenda is over. The power of one, the power of two, the power of real fans. So you're right. The empowerment here. How does it feel to have your terrible show canceled? Like, these are personal attacks. These are personal attacks to a young woman who is just trying to ply her trade as an actress. You know how hard it is to make it in this fucking business? You know how hard it is for a young black actress to make it in this fucking business? And you know how hard it is for a young black actress to get to a position where she can be lead of a Star Wars show? It was very, very difficult. And seeing these people who are clearly bitterly upset with their lives, have not accomplished anything in their own lives, going after this poor young woman who was very strong and pushed back on them and didn't want to take their abuse, did a song about it all. It's just heartbreaking to see that this is considered fandom. These kinds of reactions that are so vitriolic and toxic are supposedly the real fans of Star Wars and are so oblivious to them embracing more of the Sith and Empire approach to the world. It's sad to see this, Laura.
The internet may have been a mistake. Social media may have been a mistake. It's like so horrendous to see. And I mean, and it's not even new, and it's not surprising, and it's not the first or last time it'll happen. I mean, you wonder why Daisy Ridley went off of social media for so long. I mean, you can totally understand it, how one would probably need a little bit of distance from reactions like that. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's horrendous. People need less time on their hands or something, or they need to go out and touch grass, or they need to go out and just watch a show that you actually like. I mean, that's part of the issue, is that we live in this age of all these streaming services and all of this prestige TV. You have an unlimited amount of stuff to go watch. Go watch something else. I mean, there's so much, if you think there's better TV out there, and there is, go watch it. You don't have to do, why spend energy on this kind of thing, And it used to be isolated to things like when the prequels were coming out, to these message boards when the internet was just in its infancy, and that was bad enough. And now the fact that these people have a direct line to these actors and creators is oof. Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin. I mean, where is Star Wars responsibility? Where's Lucasfilm's responsibility in all of this? I mean, Moses Ingram was left out in the wind. Ewan McGregor had to definitely had to basically defend her. As Laura mentioned, you know, Daisy Ridley, Kelly Marie Tran, John Boyega, quite a number of people of color who've been part of this franchise get this incredible amount of hate, as if they are the ones who wrote it and directed it, put it together, edited it, scored it, and then to put it up for you to watch. It's madness, the kind of anger these people have at people who are just trying to be successful at their chosen profession, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they should have had a press conference a day ago. Like, I mean, they should have gotten ahead of this. They should have just gone and said, look, and really highlighted why it wasn't coming back and take the power away from those who think that they're the ones that got it canceled. And I agree with Laura. The internet's broken. They just had D23, and I'm a big theme parks guy. And like, I watched the whole theme parks presentation, which was great. And like, just the same things happening with Disney, the parks. There are some big decisions that might be made in the Florida park, and everybody's just crapping on it and just calling for people's heads and just like saying that it's like, you know, just the same people that hated that Splash Mountain, which by the way was one of my favorite attractions growing up, like getting replaced. And it's like the internet just, and in gaming too, in gaming, I've seen it when I've kind of dip into gaming, even in retro gaming and in streaming, like everywhere, the internet has just created a army of keyboard warriors that kind of hide behind their computer. And I think some of these people believe it enough where they would say it to someone's face, but I don't think they would say it to like an actress's face. Like, it's not her fault, right? Like, yeah. And so some of these comments are just like, you just look at it, it's like disgusting. Like, I hate that we even have to call attention to it, but hopefully, I don't know if there's a solution for it. I think it's like the solution is you get off it, to be honest. Like CM Punk, just in an interview with Sports Illustrated, said, he was asked, why did you get off Twitter? He's like, I got off Twitter because it's like, why would I hang out anywhere where someone is telling me they want me to die and that I'm a horrible person? He's like, I can go on Instagram and look at dogs, right? So like,
a good use of your time.
I don't know. It's crazy that we do have a direct line to these actors and actresses. And I imagine Jake Lloyd having an Instagram. Man, thank God he didn't, right? So
Ahmad Best. Imagine Ahmad Best having an Instagram.
Yeah. So this has been such like a hard episode to like record. It's just everything's like so negative, right? But I agree that
we're bringing some positive stuff for sure. But yes, I just want to make sure we talked about all this stuff, Kevin, to give it its proper.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, it's
I know it's not easy
to discuss it. Of course, I'm just saying the it's crazy. But those comments were bad. I feel bad for the actors and actresses involved, but I'd like to hope that hopefully that they know and feel the love from those that do love and appreciate them, and that they can kind of we were in the Schmodown. When my character debuted, a lot of people liked us. They liked the Smasher, but there would be one or two that I would just look at and they would never like me, and it would just bug me. And I was like, why? When you have 100 other people, like in a small vacuum, right? You have 100 people liking you, but one person doesn't like you. Why would I be fixated on that? And it took me a couple of years in the Schmodown to finally kind of get over that fact. And that's just the thing of life. So to have it on such a grander scale and just the death threats and hate, it's numbing. It's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, but I also think Star Wars needs to do better here, man. I mean, if you're going to come out and create this kind of content and play Kumbaya, hugging a tree, blissfully unaware of how people are going to react to you going in this diverse route, and you're not going to set up barriers and protection and fierce defense of your product, then you need to fuck off. Like, honestly, in my opinion, like, you've got to stand up for the things that you're supporting.
Yeah,
I think Kennedy is certainly out there when she wants to be. And as a strong white woman, step out there and defend your choices. Dave Filoni, get off the chair and step out there and defend these choices. You're the creative guy in charge of this stuff. You are essentially co-signing the stuff. These people need to get out. And as you said, Kevin, I never even thought about it. A press conference would have been smarter. This is the deal. And I don't know if any of the actors would have shown up to be told they're not going to have a season 2, but these people should have come out to take the hit, take the brunt. We greenlit everything. We approved it. Clearly, the public didn't want what we were putting out in the show. We'll do better, but no one should go after these people because they gave everything they could to make the show as good as it was.
Well, they do it in sports. When a team gets eliminated out of the playoffs or has a horrible season, like they have their exit interviews, then they'll also have their press conference, and they'll kind of decide, like, hey, look, we're going to go in a new direction. Probably we're going to probably start the whole thing fresh and kind of get back to where we need to be. And by the way, it's to back up your actors and your talent, and the creatives, but also to instill a little. I remember when, like, Phil Jackson, as the coach of the Lakers, like, we would have a bad loss, and like hearing him or Kobe in the press conference say, like, understand what happened and know, and they're like, we're going to get back at it. It's like you want to have your fan base kind of get the faith back too, because no matter what, having less Star Wars is a loss. Like, I know that there's going to be people that are celebrating this, but like having one less show to like look forward to is going to suck. Like that's just the way there is to it. So I think Star Wars needed to be there, like you said, to back up their actors, but also to reinstill faith to the fans. Yeah.
Fair point. Laura, let's talk about positive stuff. Like what do you take away from the show? I mean, we had some incredible lightsaber battles and choreography. I would argue we had some fantastic performances. Daphne Keane, certainly. Lee Jung-jae was fantastic in the show, in my opinion. But like, what are the positives do you think Star Wars could take away from the Acolyte? Is maybe a bit of information going forward with future shows? And what
I think the action, you hit the nail on the head. Like the style, the choreography, that stuff really worked, I think, really well. Even the people who didn't care much for this show seem to acknowledge, like, hey, episode 5 actually did slap. So I think that there's definitely some good that can come out of it in this way. And hopefully those people get, the opportunity to come back and do more stories in this universe. Because I would like to see more of that style of fighting. I thought it was really cool and really well done. I think beyond that, maybe the best they can take away from this is like lessons learned. If there isn't already somebody working a job where they come in and they are just like the person to brief the actors on what they can expect, regardless of whether or not the show is well received or not from a certain point of the fandom, like they need to hire like a whole person to just do that. So yeah, let's give that person a job, because they will be hard at work for a while, for perpetuity, I think. But yeah, I think that, beyond that, I don't know too much more. I would love to hear what you guys think beyond the action of what, good could potentially come out of this. Beyond like learning some valuable lessons, which they probably won't learn, because we'll probably get, they'll be, and when it comes to like the marketing of these Star Wars shows, it seems to all kind of go the same direction where there just doesn't seem to really be enough. They need to be like putting these shows out like in, I don't know, different parts of the internet, of the world. I don't know what the answer is, but something needs to change. I think pretty drastically in terms of marketing with Star Wars and Disney. But beyond that, I want to see more of these fights, because that was just the slow motion stuff you think would be, it sounds cheesy in concept, but I thought it worked really well. So I want more of that. But I mean, Kevin, what do you think?
I agree. The fights were good. I'm bummed I'm never going to know who that little green guy was in the very last shot of the series.
Yeah, right.
In the foreground. I don't know who that is. That was a lame joke. Sorry. I mean, the action, it's funny because like, when I was waiting for my turn to talk, like I was listening to you, but I was like, what am I going to say? Like, cause I didn't really necessarily like love the show, but the action sequences were great. As a fan of the Plagueis novel, to see Plagueis in live action was a cool moment. To see that was cool. And hopefully the two other things that I say that are positives are that it's going to be a nice launching board for these actors. And hopefully they'll do stuff outside of Star Wars that they'll be appreciated more. I think that there's a lot more eyeballs on some of these actors, and that they'll parlay this into more work. So I hope that happens. And then I saw it with my own eyes when I was trying to get more basically, like over the summer, I was like, you know, let me just get a little more involved in Star Wars Twitter because it could only help our show and help KOTOR and stuff like that. And I saw a lot of people become friends through this show, and they found a shared passion and love for the Acolyte. And that, not necessarily that I had to share in that, because I didn't, but I saw a lot of friendships made, and I think that they're all being there for each other now. So I think that's a positive out of it. And like Laura said, hopefully lessons learned. I think the one lesson I would take from it is let's stay away from iconic, legendary, legacy figures if you're going to change something abrupt, even if it's as simple as a birthday. I know we all think it's silly and that the birthday was never canon, but if you can tell the same story and avoid that, avoid Ki-Adi-Mundi, you're right. If you could have just told the same story and minimize the risk of uproar, like it could have been any other Jedi there in that part, but once he was there, it created this whole thing, right? So maybe moving forward, they'll tell stories, and maybe they'll pick legacy characters to tell stories that revolve around it, but maybe try to stray away from potentially tarnishing them, right? Especially when people were worried about Yoda. Like, is Yoda going to be in on the conspiracy now? Is he lying to everybody? And no one wants to see someone like Yoda be rewritten in a way where like he's not looked as favorably later on, right? So hopefully they'll kind of stay away from that. And I mean, I guess with Skeleton Crew, you know, unless they're going to all of a sudden have, you know, the ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn follow around Jude Law the whole time. You know, they'll probably be in their own, they'll be in their own vacuum, hopefully. So
I have one more positive I want to shout out about this show that I think they could take away from it. While I personally don't think the on-screen kind of romance between Chimera and Osha worked, it worked for a lot of people. And I think that there is something to be said about going that route in bringing some of that sort of like tension, that's like sexual tension, that chemistry into a Star Wars story. I would like it to happen with actors that have better chemistry. I think that Manny Jacinto was like putting it all out there and just wasn't getting a lot back. But I think that there were a lot of people that really responded to that and really latched onto it and were really excited about it. And I would like to see more of that in Star Wars, because the sequel trilogy really strayed away from that for whatever reason when they had the opportunity to lean into it. And I'll never really understand why they didn't go that direction, but I would like to see more of that. I mean, even down to like the talking head interviews that we got from a lot of the cast. You had Manny Jacinto and Amanda Stenberg doing these interviews together, which was great. For whatever reason, during marketing, I don't feel like we got a lot of like Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver doing interviews together. And I'll never understand that at all. So I think that there's something that could come out of that potentially. I mean, just go back and like look and see what we were getting, and look and see like how some of the response that you got specifically from women from some of those scenes. I mean, it was really enthusiastic and it was cool to see. Even if it didn't work for me, I'm glad that we got a little bit of that, because we got to see like a really positive response to it, that I hope that they take that as one of the takeaways from the show.
Yeah, I mean, because you look at the Reylo stuff, certainly a lot of people wanted to put them together and felt they should be together. And the Chimera Osha stuff is there. And so clearly there is a hunger for this. There is a taste for this in the Star Wars universe. So how do you speak into that? How do you create a storyline that speaks to that? I think that's super important. Kevin, I think you make excellent points. Let's be real, because again, you've got to parse this stuff out. All right. Just because you believe something that the anti-woke or angry people, toxic people believe, it does not mean that your belief of it means you're that. It doesn't. I think you're right, Kevin. I think you have to be careful about these legacy characters, how they're handled, how they're put together. If you want to be defiant, knock yourself out, be defiant, but don't be mad when the backlash happens. Like, that's the thing. And if they're not constructed to fight back against the backlash, and it's always a regress back to victimhood. That's not it. You knew what you were fucking with, and it blew up in your face. So, like, be careful about these kinds of things. Be aware of these kinds of things. I love taking chances with Star Wars, but you have to know where and when to take the chances. And to me, the battle action sequences were fantastic. The lightsaber fights were incredible. The design, the choreography was incredible. Yes, episode 5, as Laura alluded to, was great. I thought Daphne Keane was good. Should have given her more to do. I thought Yord was great. I wanted more for the Yord Horde, and I'm part of it. Sadly, we only lasted a few episodes, but I was proud to see him be a part of it. I wanted more to explore here. Take time with these characters. Let us get to know these characters. Let's really work on character development so that we can get to where we're going with these characters, really understand what you're creating. So I think those are the positives, that because clearly they can create new characters out of the blue, but we got to work a little harder on giving them real, or fleshing out their life, fleshing out their background, fleshing out their overall status, so that we can connect to these characters and go with them. You can kill them off. I don't mind that. It's more a matter of, have you solidified them enough so that the death really impacts people who are watching? That's important. So yeah, I think there are positives to take out of it. And clearly the fandom, there's a lot of people who've come out in support of the Acolyte, who want to see more content like this. I just think they have to work a little harder to deliver a better product so that more people will get on that train. And it is possible. I mean, how many videos came out for X-Men 97 where they wanted to sink that damn show 6 months before it came out? As soon as Metamorpho was revealed to be trans, people lost their minds. And so, but that show overcame it with good writing, great direction, fantastic animation and stories. So regardless of both. So yeah. Oh, we lost Kevin. All right. So maybe I said something offensive. I'm sorry, Kevin. But yeah, these are the positives that you look at when factoring in a situation like this with the Acolyte. So we'll see down the road what it means. I'm gonna take him down for now. We'll see what it means. Oh, there you go. You all right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I just had to get a key to my wife because we pick up our daughter.
Oh yeah, no worries. No worries.
I had the key.
So any final words here as we wrap up this discussion? Anything more to say on this cancellation? And where do we go from here? Any thoughts here as we wrap up this discussion?
I've seen a lot of people sort of expressing a fear and distrust of ever getting invested in another Star Wars story. Particularly the people who are, devastated by this news that this show is canceled. Yeah. And I don't think that that's the answer. Any new show on any streaming service or broadcast, be it an original story or set an IP like Star Wars, they're so rarely guaranteed to get a second season. That's so rare for something to be renewed, or even have the pilot go off with another season in mind. That just so rarely happens. And it just kind of makes me think, if I had in the context of Star Wars, if I had not read that Thrawn novel that came out in 2017, because I knew in advance that I would never get another Eli Vanto appearance, I would have missed out on something fantastic. That novel's amazing and that character rocks, and it just sucks that we never have seen him again, basically. But that doesn't mean that I don't want more and that I can't enjoy it for what it is. So I think, more in this loss, you can and should express your disappointment on your socials and let your voice be heard. But don't let that stop you from that thrill of connecting with a story or with a character. That's no way to live.
Yeah, agreed.
And celebrate that you have this story, that you do have this 4-hour self-contained story now, so that you'll get to have. I'm very vocal that I'm a huge fan. I was a huge fan of Man of Steel, and that I really wanted the Snyderverse to get their chance to tell their story, and they didn't. But in a vacuum, I do have these great stories, and I can enjoy them now, even though they're not part of the new ongoing canon. It's like this is a story that now exists, and so it's something that you guys that loved it can cherish it, and you could always have it. It's yours. They're not going to take it away. Hopefully they don't do what they did to Willow, like they did to Willow. Then that's intolerable. That's not tolerable. Right. But hopefully you'll get to enjoy it for what it is, and you can celebrate your love of it, and you'll be able to celebrate your love with it without people constantly hammering down on it anymore, because it's not going to be in the zeitgeist, so you get to have it on your own. And just moving forward, I just fear it's just going to be more that I'm already seeing negative stuff about Outlaws.
The game,
already people jumping that they're not going to like it, and they're already finding ways to hate it. And so this is a situation that's not to end on a downer, but this is not going to get any better. The fandom is just too entitled nowadays, and there is going to be a sect of people that is always going to hate on everything. And I think there are people actively rooting against Outlaws, actively rooting against Skeleton Crew, and that's a bummer. And so hopefully something happens that will turn things around and unite the fandom. But for now, just know that you get to enjoy, you have the Acolyte, just like I have Obi-Wan, right? So
yeah, I mean, that's Kevin, it's sad to hear that you're seeing stuff like that already. I've been looking forward to the game. I already put my deposit down at GameStop, so I can't wait to play it. But it's sad to hear that that's a situation there. And
are you going to call your show The Outlaw Playing Outlaws? Get Brian Ward on it. Make a logo, buddy.
If only you would. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say except that it's a shame and it's sad, and I feel the pain of a lot of people, but still also clear that I didn't think the show was that great, and there was a lot of potential, didn't quite reach it, but doesn't mean you give up on the show. And I agree with Kevin. The fact that the show even existed. Listen, the thing you learn about loss, and certainly I learned it after I lost my father, is you can be sad for all the time you lost, but the healing is appreciating the time you had. And that's the thing about the show, appreciating the show that even existed. At the end of the day, that's going to be important. And I hope they don't do, as you said, Kevin, what they did with Willow and just take the show off. Let people savor it. Let people enjoy it over and over again who loved it. That's how you keep them as fans. Even the ones that Laura was pointing out who might be burnt by the situation, if they can keep watching it, their fandom will resume itself and they'll come back and try again. And I think Skeleton Crew, if it's a good show, I think will help to heal some of the wounds. I feel like Michael said this on the other day on the Geek Buddy. He's like, we're back to where we were after Last Jedi. And it certainly feels that way now, clearly. So maybe Skeleton Crew comes in like Mandalorian and maybe heals a little bit of those wounds. We will see. We will see for sure. But yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with us here on the Jedi Way. Normally, we're a much more positive show, but we certainly had to deal with the reality of the cancellation of season 2 and give our thoughts overall on everything. So thank you very much. Laura, another fun show. Please let people know where they can find you and what you got going on here in the near future.
Yeah, come find me on Twitter at @shutup_Laura, where I'm often talking about Star Wars. And you can find my podcast, Force Toast, a Star Wars happy hour, on all major podcast platforms. We're on a little bit of a break right now, but we'll be back with the new episode in September.
Nice. And Kevin, of course, all the KOTOR stuff and everything else you got going on, brother.
Take a break from KOTOR. Take a break from looking at my Twitter and just go write something positive and send it to some of the actors and talented people that worked on Acolyte.
Good suggestion.
Yeah, that's all. I yield my time.
Fair enough. Well, I'll take it for him and say follow him at Kev Smets. Yeah, you can follow me at the Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And I agree with Kevin said. If you take a moment to do in your small way, push back against some of the hate and toxicity and send something positive. Those do come through. And so it's important to do that as well. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. Enjoy the rest of your time. And well, Laura, what do you have to tell them before we wrap up?
Well, you tell them a message that perhaps some folks at Disney should hear. Your focus determines your reality.